In this assignment, what we're going to look at doing is playing around with the contrast of color, or the hierarchy of color, where we have hue, value, temperature, complements, simultaneous contrast, saturation, and proportion we're going to play around with. What I want you to start with, and what I did here was on mine, I played around with all those contrasts. I started out with an achromatic, and then I played around with two posters. Where I made more, and you could always make more too. So I'm going to go to my achromatic butterfly, and what I did was I did go online. I traced one and I flipped it horizontal. Once again, you could do this as well, but I wouldn't mind you tweaking it, playing around with it a little bit more, a little bit differently. And also, if you wanted to, you could create your own. If you want to make your own design, as long as you have that body in there, two wings, and you can kind of create your own design and here, your own pattern, that'd be pretty cool to see how you can come across with something like that. But mainly, that's all I'm asking you to do is create a achromatic butterfly, so no chroma, strictly black and white. I'm going to place it into my achromatic artboard because, like, once again, the artboard's already set up for you. It's already ready to go. Just align it in there. And once again, it needs to be 4 values. And the best way to do that, of course, go to edit colors, and to tell is obviously just to look, go to your advanced options and see, yes, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 values in that white. Now, the backgrounds of all these are going to be white. You're going to play around with color in the poster artboards. But right now, I'm just looking for white for the backgrounds, which is totally fine. Now, just a quick little tip. Because you're going to be using the Recolor Artwork Panel quite a bit, I suggest making its own keyboard shortcut where you can go to Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, and you could actually play around and go to your I'd say Illustrator defaults, go to Menu Commands, you're going to go to Edit, you're going to go to Edit Colors and Recolor Artwork, and here the one that I used is Command Option Shift L. If you click on it, Command Option Shift L, it'll automatically place it in, and then you just press OK, and you rename it. So this is going to be Recolor Artwork. Okay, and that's it. Now this will be your new keyboard shortcut. And so if I do that, select my thing, my elements, Command Option Shift L, and then keyboard shortcut comes up of Recolor Artwork, which is kind of what we wanted. So that's the one I used. I think it works quite well. I used it a lot. So, you know, if you're going to repeat something over and over and over again, you might as well make it a keyboard shortcut or find out what the keyboard shortcut is. There wasn't one for this, and now there is. So even if I go back, Recolor Artwork, edit colors, you'll see it's right there. Option Shift Command L. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to play around here. So I'm just, now that I know this is correct, it's 4 values, I'm going to copy and paste it over, hold on Option, hold on Shift, and bring it over. And I just need to see 2 of these. You can easily make more, which I'll show you later. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select it. I'm going to Command Option Shift L, or of course, just to do it properly, I will go to Edit Colors one last time, just to show you that's where it is, Recolor Artwork. Then the rest of the time I'm going to be using keyboard shortcut. Now there are some options here. I don't really want to play with that. I just want to go to the advanced color option. So I'm always going to click on that where it's going to open advanced Recolor Artwork. And now what I can do here is I just want to play around with all the hues. Well, I only noticed that there's only this many hues here. Now I could play around with this. I could double click on, I want this color to be a new color, and this new color, I could double click on this. Or I can choose a color, which automatically starts with red. And it'll just go down the line, red, you know, whatever. And I could add more colors here. The way I can do that, I'm going to reset. If I just want to make a new color, I just double click on this. And I could just choose a color from my color picker. If I want to add more colors, so this color will be a different color and this color will be a different color, I can just right click, add new color, and now it's a new color. Once again, double click, and now I could use the color picker. Once again, right click, add new color. Same idea. So we can do that as well. I also have a Recolor Artwork Panel video to watch, which is in my on my channel there. So that's another way to add each color, and then of course just double click and find a new color there, which is fine. Now, what I want to do with this is, if for some reason this still wasn't I didn't love this, and I wanted to have like all those swatches that I made for you before, remember wrapping paper, I had every single color harmony there available for you. So what you can do, if you wanted to export these colors and bring them into another document, so this is just an Illustrator technique anyways, I can go to the drop down and I can go to my save swatch library. I'm going to save it as an AI. And I'm just going to go to my desktop. For now, I'm just going to put on my desktop and wrapping paper, let's say, or let's just say color harmonies. Color harmonies. It's on my desktop. I'll save it. Saves it as a swatch file, AI. Done. So now I'm going to go back to my Illustrator file that I am working on. I'm going to go to my drop down again on my swatch panel, and I'm going to open swatch library. I'm going to other library, and I'm going to go find it on my desktop. And there it is. Nope, that's not it. Where did you go? You are color harmonies. All right, there I am. I'm going to open, and there it is. It opens in its own panel, but they're all there. I can click and drag it because it's a panel. I just opened there. And now I have access to all those if I want. I can place it here in my swatch panel, or if I click it out again, now this is not going to show up properly, but they're all will still be there. If I select the ones that I want, and I already have my grayscale, so I'm not going to select the grayscale, but what I will do, I'll select the folder of one, I'll hold down Shift and select the very last one, and I'll click and drag them into my actual swatches panel, and then they all appear there. So meaning I can shut this now, I can select my butterfly, go to Recolor Artwork, and all of my colors are here, and they still have all the proper names and everything's there, which is really good. So I still can access all of them here, which I normally could do before. All right, even if you didn't want to do that, doesn't matter, but now you have access to them there. So I'm just going to play around with hue. Well, how do I play around with hue? Let's even just choose a color harmony, which is fine. I'll choose this one here. And I notice obviously black and white, or the darker color, I think that's black, it could be 90%. They are not being used right now. So that's okay. I'm just going to add 4 colors altogether. So colors 4. Now it's not adding the 4, so I need to add that 4th one. So I'm going to right click, add new color, and right click, add new color. And I wonder, actually, I don't know if this, I'm going to choose them all again. I'm going to select this again, and it does populate. Okay, good. So I added the 2 more colors, and it will populate all 4 properly. So now what it's saying is that this color that was here, and I can even click on it. If I click on that color, say find that color, well, that's the color there. So these darker colors is where that green goes. That is correct. Where about this light gray? Where's that light gray? I'm gonna click on the light gray. I'll click on where is that? And that's showing me, I think here, that's where the light gray is. And let's see if that was purple. Yeah, that's more or less exactly. So that's kind of how this little search works. Either way, what I've done here, I'm kind of more or less done, because the contrast of hue suggests that it's the difference in hue that you could have. So the hues actually change. So I'm just going to say, oh, let's even pretend this is good. I'm okay. I'm not going to change the purity. I'm not going to play around with the saturation. I'm not going to play around with any of that. I'm content with what I have. So I'm just going to say, okay, now could I play around with the saturation? For sure. But the idea behind this contrast, and because when we are playing with hue, we want to work with the purest hue, you can play around with saturation, but I'm totally fine with just picking the purest hue, and I'm just going to move on and say, okay. I do not want to make this a new harmony, so I'm just going to say no. So it'll just load it, but it won't add it to my color swatch. So the first one is done. I'm going to duplicate, hold on Option, hold down Shift, and now I'm going to go once again, Command Option Shift L to get the Recolor Artwork. I need to make sure I click on that and press OK. There we go. This should happen. That should work now. And that's all I'm going to do now is play with a different set of hues. I'm going to make sure I am not seeing yellow or green or blue or violet again. So I'm going to choose a different tetradic. And once again, it does not have to be a tetradic, even though I used one up here. I can say, how about I use this one? I'm going to make sure there's no green, yellow, blue, or purple. So let's go with this. And once again, I could play around with tertiary colors. This one's kind of close. That is an orange. Let's go with, I haven't used a red before. Violet, yellow. Might even have to play with a complement. Let's play with the complement with the 2 here. Orange and blue, no. Yellow, no. Let's go right here. Nope, can't do that either. Let's go right here. Good. What I've done here now, I know for a fact that that color is not here and this color is not here. So, and I'm just contrasting the hues, meaning I'm using different hues. And now that we understand that there's different meanings to different hues, they can give us different understandings. So what I'll do is I'll say, yeah, that's fine. It doesn't have to be tetradic. I can use color harmonies, of course. I could play around with saturations, but for this one, I specifically want pure hues to be used. And then, of course, they are going to be different. These hues will not appear here, and these hues will not appear here. I'll say, okay, done. Now what I can do, what I ideally should do, I'm going to go back to my achromatic and kind of start over again. If I want to, I can group that, Command G, and just make sure it's perfectly aligned inside that artboard. I could have done the same thing here. and just make sure, go to my artboard, align to artboard, and select, oh, wrong one. I have to make sure I'm actually on this artboard. Select that artboard too. Center, and just make sure it's perfectly aligned. I can do the same things with this, kind of going back here now. Center, group it, Command G, and center. There we go. So now I'm here again. Now it is grouped, but that's okay. Command Shift, Option L. It's still giving me a hard time not going right to Open Advanced Recolor Artwork on launch. I don't know why. That's all right. So now I have those 4 again, and I probably would have to add more here, which is fine. Add new color. That takes 2 seconds. And now I can play around with the values. Now with the value down here is the brightness value. So it goes very dark or very light. Now you can use any hue you want, but you should be playing around with the different values of those. Now we can play around in a couple different ways. We could play around with light and dark in both, but I would say that the different hues should also be played around with as well, that this one would be lighter or darker. Or you could play around in a way where this one is just like a light value and this was a darker value. So there's a few different ways we could play around here. So let's do it a couple different ways. I'm going to play around with the tetradic again because I have all 4 colors. Let's just choose one. It doesn't really matter which one. And with this, I'm going to now play around with the individual colors or the individual values, I'm going to say. So now if I click on this orange and I bring, right now it's at its purest, and we know that orange inherently has this particular value, which is, 30, 40%. So maybe what I'll do is I'll bring it and make it darker. If I want to make it lighter, I would actually have to bring it all the way up in terms of brightness and bring down the saturation, which will make it lighter. So this one, what I'm going to do, I'm going to play around with quite a few tints, but I still want a lot of chroma, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to click on the blue, same thing, and bring it down and bring it up a bit. And I want to play around with some of those tints. Now I don't just want this to be a neutral, not just yet, because I could play around with values and make it a neutral, but for now I still want quite a bit of chroma. I can go to my green, same thing, bring this up, bring this down, and I can do the same with the purple, bring it all the way up, bring it down. All the way brightness is all the way to the white of the lightest area and saturation of it. So now this, in terms of value, would say this value it's very light, and that's totally fine. I can say okay, and no, I don't want it to make it that. I'll press okay, or sorry, hold on, Option and Shift, bring it down. Once again, I'm going to align. Make sure you click on that artboard, align, and I'm going to do it again. Get back to the Recolor Artwork. Okay, now it worked. That's good. Now, once again, it doesn't matter if I choose the same hues. Actually, this one would be interesting if I kept the same hues, but I played around with the different values. So now this orange, I will go a little bit darker. But I don't want to go too dark because I still wanted to have that chroma, the proper chroma of the hue. I'll click on the green. Once again, I'll go a little bit darker. But I still want that chroma to show through. And remember, because it is the background color and it takes up a lot more space, I should be careful of that and how the values actually show. If I make the values exactly the same values, no matter what, it will look a little odd. It's a great way to explore, but we can just play around there. So I'm just bringing this up. I believe I was going to make these darker, so making that a little bit darker. And remember, blue's inherently already darker. And then this, I'm going to make it darker as well, but still keep it color. So once again, now this is obviously a big change in value. I didn't even go back here, make this one even darker just to see what it does. And that's interesting alone. But we see what it does when our values kind of do come similar to other values. So we could make it so we do see each individual element as its own, where we're not really trying to hide any of them. Like if I made them all very dark, whatever, I don't really want to do that. This works if I go too dark with the one. So once again, we're just playing around with the values. Actually, I'll keep it there just to show you that we can have the different values. Very light, very dark. Okay, if I wanted to, I could grab my artboard tool. I could duplicate this. I'm just going to bring these ones down here. Actually, I'll do it this way. I'll do it on top, just to show that there is a different one here. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to bring it up, hold on Option, hold on Shift, and I can play around some more. Really what I could do if I wanted to, I could just bring all this down, and I could play around with some more, but kind of like I did here. And you can keep playing and really, like I said, explore the color. But once again, I'll play with this one. This time, what I'll do is I will go into the Recolor Artwork, but I'm going to make let's see. I know this one for a fact is the darkest color, so I'm going to keep it dark. But these ones, I'm going to go very light. So even within the one illustration, I'm doing some dark and some light. So you can play around with it this way too. So these ones, I will go lighter. Bring up down the saturation, up the brightness. And once again, down the saturation, up the brightness, and I'm getting a nice little tint going on there. So I am still playing with value. They're not the same values. The values change. I did use the same hue though. So hue stayed the same, but the saturation and the brightness changed. And that's kind of what I wanted to do and explore with the contrast of value. So I'll just say, okay, and I'm good. Now, instead of going to the achromatic, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to start with one of the colors here. Let's just do it. I'm going to start with one of the color ones I have here. I'm going to bring it over here. Once again, select it. The artwork is selected as well. I'm going to align. And now I will play with this. And now I'm going to play with the temperature. Once again, a couple different ways we could play with temperature. I'm going to open up the Recolor Artwork Panel. And I'm going to play with temperature. Now, like I said, two ways. We could make this one cool, make this one warm. Or what I could try to do is make the background cool and the foreground warm, or vice versa. So let's just try that. So I'm going to say, okay, let's make this fully warm. And here's fully warm analogous red. So let's do that. And even this alone is fine. Do I have to play with it anymore? No. But can I work with some of these values? I can. If I want to make sure and play around and make sure that I'm scaling the tints. If we did exact, that would happen. I'd drown out some of my details. I don't want that. So I'm going to make sure that they're always on scale tint, just in case you weren't too sure about that before. Always scaling the tints. That way the values are always preserved, or if they're not preserved exactly, they are still being used. So I can see the differences. Now this is a very warm one. Once again, if I want to, I can play around a little bit more and say it's still warm, but maybe even that orange, I want to play around because it's a little too close to the background value. Maybe I can play around with it a little bit more. But once again, it's still warm. I'll say okay. And bring it down. And click on the artboard as well. Select both. Align. And I'll click on this again. And there we go. And now I can just make these all cool. So once again, I'll go to this analogous yellow-green. If I want to make it very cold, analogous green here, which of course would introduce my green, blue, green, and blue. And I could so go back to that again. And I could play around. So once again, some of the values are like that background color. Can I play with it a little bit more, or can I move some of these around? I'll move the this color here. There we go. That's interesting. And now this green, I can play around with and make it, obviously, like I said, I don't want to desaturate all of them too much. I don't want to get too neutral. I can play around with how saturated I want to get with some of these. But like I said, I like to make sure that I could still see everything really, really well. Things are getting lost a little bit. It's not wrong that I'm doing that by any means. We're just exploring color and the different ways we could play around with these contrasts. Let me say, okay. And let me do one more. So let me play around with another way we could do this. I select one, artboard. I have my artboard tool selected. I'm going to hold on Option, hold on Shift to duplicate. This time I'll select it again, but I know the background color is here. So I'm going to move these reds up, and the background color is, let's see, if I click on this red and I move this, yeah, the background color changes there. So I'm going to move this up. No, wrong one. So this is the background color. So now this background color on its own, what I'll do is I'm going to make it cool. I could choose any color I want. So now it's cool. And now look, the background is cool and the foreground is warm. So you could play around with it this way as well. I could still play around with the individual colors, make them more saturated, less saturated. This particular red, maybe red orange, I'll bring it down, whatever. Once again, I'm not playing with value here. So if you want to match values, that's fine. Try to find a similar value, or if you really want to say, no, I want them more pure, or whatever the case is, darker, lighter, you can. We're just playing around with temperature on these ones. So, okay. There we go. So temperature could be warm, cool, or it could be warm and cool, but ideally you do want to separate the idea behind foreground and background. The background is cool and the foreground is warm. Let me do that one more time and do the opposite. So grab that again, Command L. This time I'm going to say the foreground or the background, which I know this is the background now. I'm going to make this warm. And now I'm going to make everything else cool. So let's play around with that. So this one will be, instead of going here and playing with the actual swatches, I'm just going to play around with the actual color mixing and see what goes on here, see what I can find. I'll say, okay, that's cool. Let's choose another cool color. Great. And another cool color. Even right there is fine. Say okay. And that's it. So now I have cool colors in the foreground and a warm color in the back. And that's another way to play around. And once again, of course, I can play around with saturation and brightness. And that's it. The next one is complement. So I'm going to take this one again, this butterfly, copy it, hold on Option, hold on Shift. I'm going to select the artboard. I'm going to select the butterfly again. Align with my control panel open. I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to my Recolor Artwork Panel. This one I'm trying to find. Sorry, I'm just going to move this over a little bit. I'm trying to find the complements. So it's just complementary colors. And we know that when we use complementary colors, and they're all right here, complementary, I can get the intensity of both colors. And even if you just leave it at that, it's fine. Can I play around with the fact I know the background has more color? Can I play around with the fact there is a foreground and a background? So yes, you could play around with that. Could I just make the background the cool color and the foreground the warm color? Yes. Can I just leave it like this? Yes. But what I'll do is I will say, let's make just the background the cool color. And I knew I grabbed it from this one, so it's probably this color here. There we go. And I'll move this one up here. So now all the background color is this blue and all the foreground color is this orange. You can play with this, but because we're just focusing on the complements, you can do anything you want as long as you use just the complementary colors. They could have the different values, the different saturations, but we're just working with the complements. I'll press OK. I'm going to duplicate it, bring it down to my second artboard. Once again, I'm going to align, and I'm going to go back to the Recolor Artwork Panel. And that's all you're going to do here is you're just going to play around with a different complement. So let's choose a different complement. There we go. And once again, you could leave it just like this. And this is now still, you're playing around with complements. Both colors are intensified. Now remember, the background color has more area, more space that it's covering. So if you want to play around a little bit more and kind of match the amount of colors that are being used, that's fine. But even as its own, we are contrasting the complements and seeing which complement works differently in a different way, whatever the case is there. I'm going to press OK. Moving on. So some of these can go pretty quick, but you can take your time to explore the contrast quite a bit more. This one's interesting because we are going to keep some colors the same. The idea behind simultaneous contrast is that when I have a color in the foreground and I keep the same color in the foreground, let's say with two different, I'm going to do them at the same time actually, with two different backgrounds, how the color changes or looks different based on the background chosen, that's simultaneous contrast. So the color looks different, even though it's the exact same color, but the background changes. So let's take a look at this. So what I'm going to do, once again, I'm going to click, align. I'll do the same one right here. And align. I'll go to this one. And I can actually keep this exact same one, but you know what? For simultaneous contrast, I want everything to be the same purity. If for some reason this doesn't work with your illustration, try your best, but I want everything to be the same purity, so I want it to be exact. So if I click on this little arrow here next to my new color, I want everything to be exact, meaning I'm going to have all these colors will be exactly the purest value, the purest of that color, and same with the background color. Now I'm going to say, okay, actually this one, because I've already done that, I'm going to take this. And now I'm going to use the exact same orange, but I'm going to change the blue. So I'm going to get to Recolor Artwork again. So the blue is what's going to change. The orange I keep the same. Now, how do I play with this? So the orange will look different because the background changes. So let's click on that and let's see what I can come up with. If I choose a warm color, I'll say okay. Now the orange will look different. Even though it's the exact same orange, it has a tendency, because of the simultaneous contrast, to look different. But we can go further. Well, there's a couple things we could do. We could look at, number one, the warmth, the temperature, which we have changed already from cold to warm. We could look at the value. We have changed because this is dark versus light. The blue is dark and the yellow is light. So we're not talking about the orange right now. I could also change the saturation. So the saturate, now the yellow, both of them are highly saturated, and same with they're both pure. So I could play around with all of those elements. So let's just play around right now. So already the orange looks a little bit different than it was up here, but I can go even further. I could play around with that. Now look at this orange. This orange looks very different compared to that orange because of what I chose to change. So however you choose to play with this, what I suggest with the simultaneous contrast is to make both butterflies the exact same, make the foreground color the exact same and at its purest form, so exact, and then just play around with changing the backgrounds. I'm going to do another one as well, just to show. Actually, I really enjoyed playing around simultaneous contrast the most because it allowed me to really see and play and understand simultaneous contrast in a great way. I'm going to change it again to anything, quite frankly. I could change up the hue. I don't have to keep going here, color picker. I could just change the hue here just to show you. And what I'll do is this time I'm going to go very dark, but still leave some of that chroma in there. I'm going to press OK. And now what I get to do is I get to look and see, like, what does the orange look like here? What's the orange look like here? And what's the orange look like here? They look like they're all a little bit different, but once again, you know they're the exact same orange. And you can keep going and going and going on for a very long time. Play around like 20 different backgrounds if you want. I at least need to see 2 there, which is great. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to, actually, because I lost the values here, I'm going to make sure I keep those values. I'm going to choose a butterfly that has all 4 values still, or 4 different colors by now, actually. And once again, I'll align. I will select, and I will now just play with saturation. Now, we've kind of been playing with saturation a little bit, especially with value 2. We've already played with saturation. But let's go a little bit further. And here's where maybe we can play with neutrals a little bit. So let's see what that's all about. And remember, the contrast of saturation is how saturated something is or how desaturated something is. So once again, I'm going to select it, go back to my Recolor Artwork Panel. So that's kind of what I'm going to do. I'm going to play around with a neutral one and a very pure one. And I'm going to add another row. So if I want to add another row because I want to have all 4 rows different, I can just click on here, add new row, or I could right click and add a new row. So I'm just going to add 2 new rows. I'm going to click and drag these colors off so they're all their own individual rows. And what I'll do is I will play around and make sure that I add my new colors, add new color, add new color. And maybe I'll go even tetradic. It's fine. I'll go back to tetradic, choose one. There we go. And now I have all 4 different colors. And let's just say, yeah, you know what? I'll play with one that's truly just pure. And I'll just say, okay. And what I'll do with that exact same one, I think what I'm going to do with this one is I'm not going to change the hue. I am going to keep the exact same pure colors, but this time I'm just going to bring them down to neutral. And I'm going to bring them down to a neutral, to a tinted neutral. I could do a toned neutral or a saturated. And let me do I'm going to do all of them for you. I'm going to start with a tinted neutral. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring the saturation all the way very close to white, but not fully close all the way to no saturation. And I'm going to leave the brightness all the way up. All right, I'm going to do the same for the next color. Click on green. I'm going to bring the saturation all the way down, and I'm going to bring the brightness all the way up. Same with the blue. I'm going to bring the saturation all the way down, but I'm going to bring the brightness all the way up. And same with this violet. I'm bringing the saturation close to down and all the way up. Now, this is what we consider a neutral because it's very, very close to a white or a gray or a black with a little bit of chroma. Now, could I play around a little bit more and remove even more chroma? Sure. But you don't want to get too close because then this really isn't a neutral anymore. But we want to try to match and just show a little bit of chroma, but very close to a neutral, very close to achromatic. And I'll just say, okay. So now these two, you can see there's obviously a very big contrast. Now, could I play around with different hues? For sure. But if I'm just focusing on saturation, I suggest you stick to the same hues. So I'm going to play around now. This time, if I select these, I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to a toned neutral. A toned neutral, you're going to find your brightness in the middle, but the chroma can roughly stay around here. So with this tinted one, I'm going to bring my brightness to the middle. So now I'm getting more white and black, which is a more of a toned area. And I'm going to do that for all my colors. I'm just going to bring the brightness up into the middle. And then of course the last one here. And now once again, I can still play around with chroma and play around with the saturate, how much of that is in there. But I just want to show you the last one as well. Shade, where I'm going to duplicate this artboard. And I'll show you a shaded neutral. And what I'm going to do with each color, I'm going to bring the brightness down to dark, the darker value. But what I'm going to try to do as well, I am going to try to bring up the saturation a little bit because we're losing so much of it. I want to get some chroma in there. I'll do that for each one. But it's very hard to tell, but we'll try our best to do that. Bring down the brightness to the darkest area. Not all the way dark. Maybe this one I'll bring it down a little bit. There we go. And now we can see. So what we have a shaded neutral, a tone neutral, a tinted neutral set against the most pure. So this is the clearest, the strongest saturation you could possibly have, is the strongest contrast and saturation, something that is pure and something that is obviously neutral or closest to achromatic, but we don't really want to make it achromatic. We just want to make it so there's only a little bit of chroma, so that's a neutral. Now the last one we're going to work with, I am going to bring this one over one last time. And I am going to, once again, center that. Center. I'm going to get to my Recolor Artwork Panel. And what I'll do is, I want to see that a little bit better. Select and Recolor Artwork. I want to play around with the proportion. Now, the one thing I know is that I could play around with a smaller amount of hue. So maybe only 3 or 2, it's up to you. And I want to play around with how much of the color I'm using. So I do suggest maybe more of a complementary color here. So I'll go orange and blue. Or sorry, that's yellow, orange, and red, violet. Potentially. Blue, violet, sorry. And what I'll do is I will play, actually, no, I'm going to cancel. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more just so I can see a little bit better. I'm still going to play around that exact same one. There we go. And what I want to play around with, how much of the color is being used. And I might just almost do something similar to the simultaneous and make all the color of the foreground one color and the background another color. Or I could use just a little bit of one color and almost flip it on the next one and say, no, I'm only using this much color here and a little bit of color here. And the other one I say, no, I'm using a lot of that smaller color now and a little bit of the bigger color. So let's just say the blue is going to be on its own. I'll do that for the next one. It's the yellow that is on its own. So the yellow is going to be, that's fine. So what I'll do is, actually no, that's not what I wanted. I want to take the background color, which is, I know I took that blue, which is the blue. Nope. I see. It's this one here. Because I took it from here, my apologies. I took it from this one. I know that the background color is this now. Yes, I gotcha. So the background color is this color. I'm changing it to blue, or the blue violet. And now I'm using this color. And what I can start to say is, you know what? How about only a small area is going to be used for this yellow? So that yellow, I'm going to bring the blue over here. Yeah. And I'm also going to bring the green over here. There we go. So only what I'm showing you is I'm using a lot of this blue, or the blue violet, and a tiny, tiny bit of the yellow orange. And that's it. So now I'll say, okay. And I'll take the exact same one, and now I'll flip it and show the exact opposite. I'll take the same hue, same everything, and now I'll flip it. I'll say everything that's here is going to go up, and I'm going to switch it out. So I'm going to switch you, get you there, and now this one I'm going to bring down, and now I see the difference. Now I see that I'm using a lot of yellow orange and very little blue violet. And because of that, I'm seeing the contrast of proportion. How much of the color I'm using. I'm using very little yellow orange and quite a bit of blue violet. Same with this. I'm flipping it and doing the exact opposite. And that is the idea of contrast of proportions. How little amount of color you're using versus how much you're using. Now, I like to consider that real estate in terms of like if this was land, like only a little bit is being used of this and a lot is being used here, where this space only takes up this much space, but this takes up, the yellow orange takes up this much space. So that's kind of how I usually play around with it. There are so many ways to play around with each one of these, but this is true where you could keep the same hue here and it works out quite well. So it just gives you an idea of how to play around with proportion. Now, the last part of the assignment, I'm not going to go through specifically because I've already done quite a few of them. You're going to take maybe this butterfly or maybe this one. It doesn't really matter. You can even take the same butterfly from the same, just because it works that way. This butterfly here, you need 7 butterflies on each one. Now, I would love it if you played around with 7 different butterflies. So say I took this butterfly here. I'm just holding down Option to duplicate. I'll take this one here. Duplicate and one more. Let's take this one. And I want you to design something like this where you're using 7 different butterflies and you're creating a poster for the Butterfly Conservatory. Now, all the information you need is here. You could add more information. You want to add a tagline, you want to add a QR code, you want to add social media, icons, you totally can. But the minimum amount of information, you need to have a title, Butterfly Conservatory, their URL, their phone number, and their address, and then their logo somewhere. And the only black, I do not want to see black used anywhere, except potentially it's going to be achromatic, potentially. And the only white that is being used, once again, is the backgrounds of these boxes. But no white or black should be used on these posters, except for this logo. This part of the logo can be black because that's their logo. We don't mess with branding. But all the type cannot be black. Everything cannot be black or white. If we go back to the posters, there is no black being used except for the logo. There's no white being used anywhere. So we want to try to get rid of any white or black. And that also goes for all of your butterflies too. No white or black, strictly hue. Even if they're neutrals, they will still have some chroma to them. Not fully black. I do not want to see that because we need to play around with just the hues. So what I did was, I played around a little bit different. I would love to see 2 very different compositions. Now, I know these ones are the same. I was just playing. But obviously this composition is different than this composition. It's how you choose to lay out your butterflies, all 7 of them, and how they work. The good thing is, the difficult thing or just the interesting thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a background that will have to work with all of the butterflies. You're going to have type a color that's going to have to work with all the butterflies. So how do you do that where they don't get lost, but they do stand out, or maybe one stands out more than another? That's okay. But how are you going to do that? And I would definitely like to see many different compositions, but you only have to do 2, but they cannot look like mine, more or less. They have to be very different. Can you have some bled off? Totally. You could have some that do not, everything has to sit on the artboard. So there could be bleed, there could be some bigger, smaller. Once again, you're playing with all the different contrasts that you've learned in terms of something smaller, something bigger, different position, orientation, many different contrasts you could play around with here. If you want to choose a very specific composition, you can. If you want to play around, you can. More organized or more unbalanced. It's entirely up to you how you wish to be symmetrical or unsymmetrical, or I'm going to say unbalanced. And that's it. That is what I'm looking for with this assignment. Play around more if you'd like to play around more. I suggest you do. You're going to get a lot more out of it with the color exploration. And I hope that helps. Last one I'll do is I will say, if you did add a bunch of extra ones, that's not a problem. Currently, this is set up. If you make the PDF file, save a copy. I'll put it on my desktop for now, PDF. Of course, you need to submit to me the PDF and the AI. Name it properly, last name, first initial, section number, _ butterfly. Save. Okay, view PDF after saving. So I'll see achromatic for, I accidentally added those. I don't need that. So don't put don't put the trim marks or bleed on them. There's not going to be any. And then I'm just going through all the different ones I'm going to see here. As long as they all show up, that's great. And of course your 2. And now obviously what happens, all the extra ones I've added, they're going to be at the end of the PDF, which is totally fine. That's okay. If you added extra, if you want, you could just show the ones that you want to show me. That's totally fine. Meaning you can go back to your artboards and you could actually only say, well, you know what? Because I added a few extras, it should actually only go up to poster 2. But remember when I added this artboard and this one, all these extra ones, they actually show up at the bottom here. If you don't want to show those to me on the PDF, that's fine. I'll see them on the Illustrator file. But if you just want to show the ones that you see here, you'll know that it goes from 1 to 17. All the extras appear later. So from 1 to 17, you could go to File, save a copy. And now your artboards, when you make a PDF, you'll say, not all the artboards. I want to range from 1 to 17. That's the first artboard to the 17th artboard. I'll put it on my desktop again. I'll save it. Again, save and replace. And once again, save, and it'll only be 17 artboards. And your very last one will be your poster, your second poster, okay? So that's all I need from this. I hope that helps, and hopefully you explore well and enjoy looking at all the different colors and the different contrasts and seeing, if I were to play with all these contrasts, which one is strongest, which one do I get a lot out of, which one is more actually trickier to play with, which one is easier to play with, which one works best if I needed something to stand out more or something to not stand out more, make it more bland or set in the scene, like more of the neutrals. It's entirely up to you how you play around.